even new attacks over Beirut, despite the announcement of a ceasefire between both sides, the Lebanese government and the Israeli side. Of course, those attacks are continued, could be expanding with no respect to this ceasefire agreement. And even Israel has established a so-called a yellow line inside the Lebanese territory that's about a dozen kilometers out of close to the border since the initial ceasefire came into effect. And very delighted to be having with us over the phone for more details Dr. Monica Williams, the political analyst. Good morning, Dr. Williams.
Good morning. Thank you for having me today.
It's a real pleasure to have you. Let's first start by Israel and Lebanon, how have reportedly agreed to implement a conditional ceasefire. What are the characteristics of this ceasefire, and how could it be different from the other one, since it is always violated by Israel?
Of course, as you said, that a recent escalation between Israel and Lebanon demonstrates that the ceasefire framework announced by 2 weeks ago, especially from Donald Trump, has failed to address the deeper strategic and security dilemma during this conflict. Despite repeated diplomatic efforts and international pressure, military operation has continued along the border, culminating, of course, in intensified Israeli strikes, and including operation in Nabatea, and of course a vacancy of Al-Sharif castle. And of course these developments reveal that the confrontation is no longer only about immediate security concern, but has part of a broader struggle over regional power balances deterrence, and of course the future political order in Lebanon. The presence of Israeli military operation after the ceasefire, in my point of view, it reflects Israeli belief that the current arrangements are insufficient to neutralize the security threat from Hezbollah. And of course, Israeli decision makers continue to argue that Hezbollah returns military infrastructure, operational capabilities, and of course the capacity to reconstitute its forces despite the damage during previous round of flights. And of course, Israel appears committed to maintain any strategy achievement, especially in Israeli community, and of course on the other side, the confrontation expands beyond the immediate Lebanon arena. The campaign is closely linked to broader regional strategy aimed at weakening Iran network of allied actors across the Middle East, Hezbollah, Hamas, and of course this demonstrates what's happening in the Gaza on the other side. So nowadays, Israeli military action in length of whether Israeli, Iranian, not Hezbollah only, on Hamas, where any degradation of Hezbollah capabilities is considered a strategic deal.
Right. Israel have established or maintained a yellow line inside the Lebanese territory that is close to the border ever since this ceasefire was effected. What are the strategic objectives behind this move, and could it be similar to the other yellow lines that were established in Gaza?
Of course, it's related to each other, as we said. It's of course part of the Israeli strategic in the border or in the arena of war. And on the other side, let me assure that the battle around areas such as Beirut Castle carries both military and strategically deviated terrain, overlooking large portion of southern Lebanon, provides operation advantage, for instance, in battlefield awareness. Historically, the site has long repeated as a sample of military control and resistance in the region. Consistently, military activity around such locations carries psychological and political implications that extend beyond their immediate tactical value. Another critical dimension of the current escalation is the apparent disconnect between military developments and political negotiations, as we said in the first question. While diplomatic channels remain active, the military and political track are increasingly operating independently. Israel appears determined to continue military operations regardless of the pace of negotiations, believing that sustained pressure can improve its bargaining position on the table. So Hezbollah, on the other side, seeks to perceive enough operational capabilities to maintain leverage in any future political settlement. So the dynamic reduces the short-term diplomatic initiative alone, which can produce lasting stability.
How is Lebanon likely going to be responding to the Israeli presence, the military presence, I mean, inside Lebanon, and also the strikes in the premises or amidst the negotiations of a possible ceasefire?
Of course, the Lebanon state is responding to this escalation as navigating the current Israel escalating a dual-track strategy, and we have to remember what's happening from the state on the first day of the escalation or confrontation between Iran and Israel, and of course, when Hezbollah joined this war that combines diplomatic engagement with effort to strengthen state authority in the south. And unlike Hezbollah, whose response is primarily framed through military between the Lebanese government is attempt to position itself as limited actor responsible for implementing international commitments. Of course, at the diplomatic level, Lebanon has intensified its engagement with international stakeholders, especially, for instance, with France. And of course, as the United States, we follow and we witness that a lot of United Nations sessions, and of course, it's all moves to put more pressure on Israeli into address to ceasefire arrangements and respecting Lebanese sovereignty. And Lebanese officials continue to emphasize that the implementation of UN Security Council Resolution 1701, of course, especially the President and the Prime Minister, should he assist that resolution should be comprehensive. I mean, the stability cannot be achieved through unilateral security measures. And at the security level, the Lebanese state is seeking to expand the role of Lebanese armed forces in the southern Lebanon. This approach reflects an effort to demonstrate the state or non-state actor should be responsible for the security and enforcement of international agreements. However, the government's ability to fully implement this objective remains constrained by limited resources, domestic political divisions, as we see, and that the complex reality of Hezbollah influence within Lebanon security and the political landscape.
So how could the latest attacks on southern Lebanon be received? I mean, the threats that was given, there were very obvious statements of threatening to strike Beirut by the Israeli government. How is that received by the Lebanese government, and could it possibly trigger an escalation, I mean an urge to escalate the situation on both sides?
Of course, as we say that the Israeli military operation in Lebanon evolved beyond traditional border into a sustained campaign aimed at degrading Hezbollah military capabilities and to prevent the group from establishing a significant presence near the border. So Israel has relied on a combination of airstrikes, intelligence-driven targeting, and drone borders. So Israel today follow or adapted ground in strategically sensitive areas. the Israeli military doctrine is centered on creating a security buffer and denying Hezbollah's ability to rebuild its command or logistical and muscle infrastructure in southern Lebanon. For the Lebanese government, that did mark, as we said, a different approach rather than engaging directly in the military confrontation, and its focus on diplomatic channels and international mediators. And Lebanese state ability to act remain constrained by political fragmentations and some limitation inside. One of the most significant consequences of the ongoing has been the displacement crisis. Of course, recurrent Israeli strikes, security concerns forced thousands of Lebanese civilians to leave their houses in south border areas and seek refuge in safer regions. The displacement has placed additional pressure on communities already struggle with economic challenges, inflation, and limited public service. And the humanitarian dimension of the crisis is becoming important. Prolonged displacement risks creating long-term social and economic consequences, including loss of livelihood and disruption of education, damage to infrastructure, increasing pressure on government resources. So for Lebanese state, managing the displacement issue has become nearly as important as addressing security dimension to the conflict itself.
What role did Washington play in facilitating those negotiations between the two parts?
Of course, there is a lot of role. Donald Trump, most influential external actor in managing the Netanyahu ambitions in the region. Washington now is based on the delicate balance between supporting Iran's security concern and to prevent a broader regional conflict that could displace the Middle East. And from this security perspective, that state continue to affirm Israeli right to defend itself against perceived threats emanating from Lebanon, and America on the other side, especially the Minister Foreign Affairs have repeatedly emphasized the need to prevent Hezbollah from rebuilding military infrastructure near the border, and have supported efforts aimed at strengthening security arrangements along the blue line. At the same time, it's deeply involved in diplomatic mediation efforts between who contain the conflict and prevent slide into full scale. And of course, United States work closely with regional and international partners. In my point of view, the main object of United States in this regard to try to implement the agreement between the United States and Iran. Of course, it's part of what's happening in Lebanon, and of course, we note and follow what Iran said last week when Iran insisted that the Lebanon ceasefire is part of all ceasefire agreements.
Right. On that note, Dr. Monica Williams, the political analyst, would like to thank you so much, and you have a good day. And now it's the World Environment Day, observed on June 5th each year, that puts itself on a spotlight on a reality or the communities around the world already living. The climate change is reshaping lives where people live, how they earn a living, and whether they could stay. This year's theme is climate action that is calling on every one of us to act with greater urgency. The global observance is hosted by Azerbaijan in Baku, and we have more details in the coming report.
Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli reaffirmed the Egyptian government's commitment to reviving Cairo's